This is Brian Samborino, and you're listening to the Disruptive Consulting Podcast. It's my mission to help decision makers and business owners excel, so I'm bringing you some of the nation's top consultants and executives to break down the strategies that they've used to disrupt the average day-to-day process.
Who is your market?
Who is positive?
That's how do you typically reach their parents?
CEOs knew it wasn't working. That's why they just come in here. And she always comes up.
I cannot say enough great things about Zoho. And all right, we're live. So everybody, we're here with Andrew from. So I'm gonna cut this out. How do you?
No, keep this in. This is perfect. It's Aether Automation. Aether, yeah. Everyone gets it wrong. I knew it was coming, right? Everyone gets it wrong. Ether, like the gas. So the reason there's an A in front of it in Old English, in Old English, there's this idea that like matter has to travel through something. So light, which in theory is like very small matter, has to travel through some medium. And they call this medium the ether, and it's the thing that held the universe together. So the idea is, hey, we're Aether Automation. We're that thing that pulls your business together, right? So there's a story behind it, but yeah, it's called Ether, not Aether.
All right. So you're from Canada, right? Just so everyone gets a little recap, we're gonna put it in the bio. But if you want to give us a little background on who you are, what you do,
sure.
That'd be great.
So yeah, we're located Vancouver Island in Canada. It is currently very cold up here. We are Zoho partners. We work on implementing business automation inside the Zoho ecosystem, and that's the long and short of it. We are a development team and not a consulting team in a traditional sense.
Cool. So you mentioned. I want to get into the first question is which problem do you solve? So I know I mentioned it earlier to you, but I have like, for anyone else listening, like a set number of questions that I'm going to be asking. And these don't need to be too detailed, but one is we're talking about being disruptive in the industry which you serve. And I'd like to know what problem you solve. And what do you think separates you from the rest of the people that do what you do, because I know there are plenty of other Zoho partners, but you obviously stand out enough to be featured here. It's for me to begin to collaborate with you. We connected a couple times, right? So what makes you different? What do you do? What do you solve?
Yes. So the problem we solve. So in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way of answering that, the problem we solve is we do the things that consultants tell their clients they'll do for them for that client, right? Or for that consultant, right? So our model here is we're like a white labeled I'm going to say implementation partner, but we'll say we focus on the development end of those implementations. And so the specific problem we solve is when a consultant has clients, specifically Zoho consultant has clients, and a client has a need. The problem we solve is when that consultant goes, oh crap, I don't know how to do that. Right, and they never have to think that again because let's go to these guys and they'll do it for my client and I'll look really good while doing it.
Right. Well, guilty. you probably saved me 2 or 3 hours that day, so I appreciate it. And I think, for me, that's why you're such an asset to companies like mine, right? Because we do some development in Creator, and we have our proprietary software, which hopefully will help us make better. But most of what I do is just in CRM. It's very basic. The stuff in Creator, you mentioned before, it's got the referencing to the tables where Deluge does not. And this is the stuff that people like me get tripped up on. But by working with you, I have the ability to offer my clients like so much more value.
Yeah.
And I think that. Oh, go ahead.
We like to have a conversation called the magic wand conversation, and this is dangerous to give to a consultant, specifically because suddenly, like, great, I could think of lots of things I'd like the magic wand to. They're great, all those things inside Zoho. Any of those magic wand stuff that's all doable. We could do all that stuff, right? And anyways, yeah, that's why we have the vertical we have.
You know, I really dislike when I hear someone say once, no names. 2 years ago, I was only an analytics partner, right? I'm also Zoho partner for anyone that doesn't know. I was only an analytics partner, so I would just build reports and do some integrations and all of this. And I had this guy come in. He was a CRM partner specifically, had been a CRM partner for the longest time. And he had worked in a whole bunch of different CRMs. And I bring him to meet this client, and they're asking, like, now looking back on it, this was the most basic automation between books and CRM. I think it included desk too. And it was very, very simple. Now that I have experience and I'm looking back, at the times, like, no, that's not possible. That's not possible. And I'm trying to explain to this client, like, I know it's possible. I know it's possible, you know? And after some time, we just didn't end up working together. And that was the reason. And I think that is what's most important to me in finding someone to partner with, that we can work on projects that we both know that it's doable and we have resources, or even just the mindset that, like, I can figure this out, right? Especially with the internet's elaborate documentation everywhere. It's absolutely impossible to tell someone that, like, nah, it can't be done.
So it's actually funny you say that exact phrase. No, it's not possible, can't be done. That's actually why I started coding to begin with, right? I had a developer, he had the gumption, the gonads to say, hey, sorry, that's not possible. And I got so mad because it's code. It is possible. Don't tell me it's not possible. So I taught myself code, fired him, and implemented it myself. I'm like, I'm not, there's anyone who tells me no, I don't want to work with, right? Like it's crazy to me. So I don't want to hear, especially in Zoho, if someone says, yeah, it's not possible to do this in that environment. Like, your gut reaction should be, no, you're the wrong partner for it.
100% agree with you. To me, that is what separates the winners in this field from those that are not going to make it long term. And that's why I try to consider myself, my brand, the way that we present the service, the partnerships that I create, disruptive in a sense of, I know a lot of consultants that have been just consulting for 40 years, but they've not built this network. They've not built these new ideas. They've not really embraced their own growth in this industry, other than that one specific service that they offer, right? That's what I believe makes people like us disruptive, right? Hence the name of the show.
I always find it funny, I could go on all day about bashing consultants about things, right? I always find it interesting when someone has been in, specifically consulting for a while, right, and doesn't have a large network, right? Like I don't understand it. A little later we'll talk about some things I do for growth. But I don't understand when a consultant specifically doesn't have a very large network. How do you get your ideal client? Like no one's searching for consulting services. You're gonna get pummeled by KPMG, right? Like they just have more marketing spend than you. You'll never win the SEO or ad spend against them, right? So I don't understand when a consultant doesn't have the network after years in the industry.
And when I first started this, like I mentioned, I was only an analyst. I did nothing else, and I had no business experience. This is my first. So this whole development has just been a huge 5-year learning, one large learning curve for me, right? And that was my exact argument. I need to become different than all the other consultants, because if someone Googles like data analytics agency, the first thing that's going to pop up is Deloitte or Teradata.
Yeah.
I can't compete with Deloitte or Teradata, it's impossible. So I completely agree. Now, I think I already know the answer to this next question, but feel free to elaborate. How does I ask this mainly to when I interview other consultants, it's simple with you. How does technology influence your or complement like product, service, industry, or even if is there something that you've observed over time in the development of this technology that's made you more capable?
So yeah, and the short answer is yes. Yeah, there's things I've observed. There's a couple things that I'm kind of keeping a pulse on in terms of technology and how it impacts us, right? So we're a tech company. We mostly do code, right? Like a lot of the work we do ends up being writing code, right? So on one end there's economies of scale, right? The more code we write, the more backlog of code we have, the more abstractions we can pull out of that code, the less time we need to spend on the next implementation that's the same or similar, right? And that's one of the benefits of working in code and in technology. So that's one aspect of this that over time we've been able to start to see those benefits. And the other thing that is important, that is super hot this week, right? I'm sure you've seen it on LinkedIn is AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not worried about AI replacing development work, right? There's a joke that says, for AI to replace a developer, the client would have to be precise about the requirements, right? and so like my job is secure, I'm fine. But we use AI to help everything from testing to requirements defining, right? Even some basic code, right? We use AI to help out with that, and then it's a developer then works on that code to refine it to the client specific requirements. So I think that's a big one that's let's say impacting our industry, or something that allows us to stay disruptive.
What do you use to test the code? Any programs specifically that you'd like to mention?
So yeah, no specific programs. We use Selenium, right? For like when we do a large deployment, we're assuming the client is going to have some additional things that happen after the deployment. So what we do is we write a Selenium script that goes through and tests all the user stories, right? And then in the future, if we need to deploy something, hey, can we change this to blah blah blah? We can make the change, and then the Selenium can run the same tests just to validate that it still works, right?
Wow.
And so that's our big one in terms of testing or using technology to test. But a lot of it's still manually done, right? There's nowhere around a human interacting with some website or web page or automation to break it themselves.
Right. What is the name of the company or the application that just created that AI photo that sparked this whole conversation? Do you remember?
I don't know the photo one. So the one that we look at is OpenAI's GPT, right? So they have the GPT chat right now. Before that, there was GPT-3. And that's the primary language processing one. And that's for me, that's the only one I care about. The image one is interesting, right? It's definitely new and novel. Some people really like it. It may impact, art or marketing. Not really our industries. For us, the text-based one is, I think where all the future is in terms of development. Simply because the data, you can do a lot more with, prompting AI to say, hey, write me a script that does this, right? Then saying AI, hey, make a picture that, uses this as a prompt, right?
Right. I've recently been using AI for marketing, and it's not something that I really had discovered until, God, it's got to be a month ago. And now I want to identify like the countless hours that I put in. I mean, think about like when I designed my first website, or even the second or third iteration of it, I designed it in Wix by myself. And you think about like probably put 100 hours into that thing. And then now if you wanted to generate a website, you just put the name of the company and the industry, and there it is. Blogs, 30 seconds, It's
This is the one that actually concerns me, is the blogs. So on one layer, like SEO is going to become like a completely unwinnable game, right? Someone now working 8 hours a day churning out like highly optimized blog posts for a website using AI, like
right.
you truly can't compete with that. But the other thing that I think will be very interesting over the next year is copyright infringement, because that AI pulls data from the website. It's trained, it's trained on, whatever you want to generate in terms of copy. It's trained on content that's online. And I've seen this. I've seen this a few times. You'll put in a prompt to an AI. There's a lot of popular ones for specifically for marketing. One of them is called Jasper, right? Or Jarvis or whatever they're called now.
Oh, it's
And I've
Jasper.
seen, yeah, Jasper. I've seen that one produce identical contents to websites that are already online, right?
Oh,
So
really?
it had an overfitting problem with some niches, right?
Huh.
And if you don't catch that, then you just put out content from someone else's site. Your SEO gets damaged, but also they can hit you with copyright infringement.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm interested in seeing what happens with that. It's definitely exciting, to not be on the receiving end of that copyright infringement claim.
Well, I need to check because I just posted about 10 to my website, so it's gonna be terrible if so one thing that I did was I genned content about the software that I developed based on my website, and a lot of what it came up with was reasonably accurate, but it was exactly what I had typed, right? So I mean, it just goes to show that on a larger scale, if you said like, why am I better than Deloitte? It would likely take information from their site and bring it to my blog, right?
Yep.
So, it could be dangerous
Yeah.
for sure.
It's important to remember that AI isn't creative, right? It's statistical analysis of what already exists, and it's trying to basically give you a response to your prompt that is positive, right? And so it won't create anything new. It kind of just spins language in a way that it thinks will have a positive response from the user, right? And um, you know, uh, earlier this year, there's stuff about Google's AI, having sentience, right? And when you look at the actual code, like it's definitely not, right? It'll be more similar to a parrot, making noises that it's heard before, right? Or similar kind of noises or similar phrases that it's heard before, and it kind of pieces together. It would be, I think it's closer to that than it would be like sentience.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. One thing that I also want to point out is you mentioned I forgot what the word was that threw this thought out there, but think about writing a book. Like, do you Robert Greene? Have you ever
Yeah.
you've read Robert Greene? All right, so The Laws of Human Nature, what, like 600 pages? Now
Yeah.
think about if we were to reference something in that book, would it or for our book? So I mean, really, all of the self-improvement books are just someone taking an idea and then spinning their own and putting here. So if I wanted to write something like that, pretty simple,
You can.
right?
You can.
You could just write a book in a week.
So one of my devs, about 10 years ago, before I founded this company, I had a chat with him, and he told me about this word spinner. This was before AI was thing, again, like it was like 10 years ago. He told me about this word spinner that analyzed languages in like academic papers, right?
Yeah.
And would produce papers using a similar language structure, right?
Right.
The papers didn't mean anything, right? It just had that academic like language to it. And they submitted 10 papers to various journals across the country, and 2 of them were published, right? And it didn't mean anything. There was no data. There was no like if you sat down and mapped out like what they were trying to say, it didn't say anything, right? But it was convincing enough to sound like a human wrote it. So if we're talking about like the personal development stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a ton of AI written personal development books, right? It's all the same things, taking action, thinking good thoughts, right? Planning, blah, 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 blah. Like it's the same stuff.
Right. Now, are you into personal development at all?
I am. I'm definitely more on the action oriented side of personal development versus the, I'll say, think and grow rich, or the secret side of the side of things.
Right.
So yeah.
So where I'm going with this is for years I've read like every book by Malcolm Gladwell and Robert Greene and all like the I don't know, the default people that you think of as default self-help writers. And it's always been like something that I thought was incredibly helpful if you actually take the action. And one book that like always stood out to me was I was single at the time, and I was reading The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene, and it was the first time that I had experienced something structured in a way that I can relate it to people, to relationships, and to business. And I think that was the most valuable lesson that I learned from any of that. I mean, you can read 1,000 how to sell books, but none of the books that I've read that talk about how to sell, how to develop, how to this, it never has more of an impact on me or the way that I treat situations than that book or that author.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah, there's a few books that had a similar impact on me, but I wouldn't call them personal development books, right? Good to Great as an example, right? Completely changed the way I look at business, changed the way I operate within business, right? I haven't read The Art of Seduction. I've read from Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power, right? Interesting. I don't think in what we do that's those lessons, that development is particularly helpful, right? Where was I going with this? I don't remember, but yeah, I think if you're gonna read personal development books, like the trick is not to read all of them. The trick is read one and then make sure that one is implemented, because things work if you work them, right? And this is why my bias is always towards action, right? Great, okay, this information is nice information. I like information, but without doing something with that, like it's useless information.
And here's the most profound thing that I've read out of any of them. And then I'm sorry, we got kind of off topic, but I'll get back to what I want to cover. There was this one story, and I don't remember the names. I don't remember the period. I'll butcher it if I try. But in short, there was a king, and he thought that he was so powerful that he eventually told his people, like, I'm so powerful that I can control the tide. So he put his chair. Now this story is likely made up, right? But he put his throne at the edge of the water, and he said to the tide not to come in. It eventually came in, and it drowned him. And he realized, like, the people realized, like, and it's probably just some analogy or made up story, right? But when I read that, it clicked. And when I read that, it was during the time of me being in business, and that was one of the things that helped me grow as I have, because that story was so impactful that it helped me notice, like, you need a team in order to grow. Like, you need partnerships in order to grow, right? And like I mentioned, this is my first business, but you've had plenty. So my next question is, during your time in business, is there any specific strategy that you've used to help grow that someone listening to this, once we get off this call, can say, like, I want to try to implement that in my business?
So the number one strategy I go with is I'm an aggressive networker, right? I make a point out of it to network, meet a lot of people, stay in communication with a lot of people, right? And I'll be honest, that is the only thing I know of that actually impacts growth, right? Like, yes,
Okay.
you can have, like, you could be, let's say, the best marketer in the world, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't mean you can market nothing, right? Like you still need a product, which is someone else, right? And so at the most basic level, there's networking, right? So I'd say that's number one, right? Like yes, there's I'll say standard business practices. Have a decent brand, do your marketing, but in terms of growth, like to go from one person startup to maybe a small team to a larger team, like it's networking, right? And yeah, that's where I spend all the time I can is on networking, and then beyond that, get good at systemization because that's the other part of it, right? You do not want to be doing everything in your business, and if you are, you're going to need some serious drugs to maintain that, right? And if you know what those drugs are, tell me because I would love to know, right?
Actually,
But
ironically, I'm not sponsored, but Alpha Brain is full. It's literally right here on my desk. Yeah, that helps me every single day. I take it before I exercise. I take it before this. I took it right before this meeting. I had a meeting earlier. I took it then. Took it in the morning. It's an amazing product. It really is. And then when you don't have this, the other option for anyone listening, and myself included, is automation. Like contacting people like you or using something like Zoho Flow or even Alteryx, what I was telling you about. I've still not heard back from them with that partner program, but just automating those simple processes. It was an extra step because I can't integrate with the form or the meetings app that we're working with right now. For me to have to wait until the day before, generate the meeting link, update the calendar invite. But if in one step you could have accepted, then immediately got this and the link and the calendar invite update, it would have saved me, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. But then we think about doing that, a task that is maybe non-critical in your business. You have to do it 20-30 times a week. You just save yourself 300 minutes,
So there was a concept that was brought up to me a while ago called a leveraged action, right? And automation is on the far end of that, right? If you can automate something, like you've leveraged that action as much as you can, right? But the idea in terms of leveraged action is taking an action once that has a compound result over time, right? So yes, you can, if you were to do it yourself manually, right, that's just a standard action. If you were to train someone to do it, right, that's a little more leverage, right? If you're going to create an instruction manual and training for that to be used to train other people to take that action, that's even more leverage, right? And the idea is, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, founder, whatever, that you should be pushing all the actions you take towards leveraged actions. The more leverage, the better, right? The problem with automation, and it's there's a level of irony of me saying there's a problem with automation, but the problem with is sometimes people will try and automate too quickly, right? And then they'll learn, hey, this doesn't work, or there's some variance here. I need to then unautomate it and then do it manually when they should have been working their way up to leverage action, right? Train someone else to do it, watch how they're doing it, then create the instruction manual, have people start doing it, learn from something from that before you automate it, right? Because once it's automated, there's no more flexibility. That's how it is, right?
Right. That's a great tip. That's a great tip for sure. Okay. Well, I think I think that's it. That's all I have today. So I appreciate you coming on. If before we drop off, tell everyone where they can find out more about you, LinkedIn, website, anything like that. You have a couple of YouTube channels.
Yeah. So there's our website. If you have if you're a Zoho partner or consultant that has realized that you promise too much, you can go to our website, Aether Automation. Like we said, it's AETHER. Yeah. We also have a YouTube channel. If you're again, if you're a Zoho partner, I will teach you how to code on our YouTube channel. All right. Specifically in the Zoho language. And of course, there's my LinkedIn if you want to reach out and talk about something else.
All right. Wonderful. Well, it's great having you. Thank you. As always, it's a pleasure. And
Great to be here.
hopefully we'll get together soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Great day.